everyone, on Skar King Part 2 today, I'm happy to say we'll be adding clay to this kaiju skeleton, I say. And as I sculpt away, we'll be going over some Monsterverse history and lore today, I do say. Now, as I make Skar King today, we'll be going over this kaiju's malevolent plans, I say, and how this movie monster planned on taking over the world, you could say. So now that we're set to explore more of the Hollow Earth, it's time to uncover these world-ending threats hidden beneath the surface. One of which being, of course, the Skar King. This titan of a primate is said to be older than Kong, and potentially even Godzilla, being a warrior that's potentially much larger and smarter and more experienced, and is perhaps even stronger than the king of the monsters himself. He is such a world-ending threat that even Godzilla has to evolve to keep up with the competition. Skar King has seen the Kong-Godzilla war that pushed both species to the brink of extinction. He has seen civilizations rise and fall. Now there's evidence that tells us he has been there since the Monsterverse beginning, silently lurking in the shadows. Adam Wingard has referred to Skar King as the most deadly threat that Godzilla and King Kong have ever faced. But that kind of leaves us one big question: why now? With the likes of King Ghidorah and Mechagodzilla already defeated, how does Skar hold up to these world-ending threats? Ghidorah flattened several cities across the entire planet, nearly terraforming it into his own image. So what was Skar King doing at this time? If he is the most powerful threat, why didn't he simply rise up and defeat King Ghidorah? And today I plan on answering that very question. What was Skar doing during the time of Godzilla vs. Kong, and how that leads into the new empire? First, we have to go way back to 1973, hee, when Bill Randa visited Skull Island for the first and, well, last time. We were introduced to Kong, who was merely 100 feet tall at the time, and we learned about the history on the island, which I have covered in previous videos. Kong's family was pushed to Skull Island by the Godzilla species, and once there, skull crawlers hunted them down and began to feast on all the primates. As a infant, Kong hid from the conflict and rose as allegedly the last member of his species, so he thought. And in the same film, we see a massive handprint painted on the cliff face in blood. At first, I think everyone thought it was Kong's, but upon closer inspection, it becomes quite clear that this handprint is far too large to be King Kong. And during the time of Legendary's marketing campaign, they did imply that this was never meant to be Kong, but was in fact the Skar King. But why would he be here at Skull Island? I have a sneaking suspicion that the skull crawlers were sent there in the 19th century by Skar King to wipe out the exiled Kong tribe that had escaped from execution and refused to kneel to his leadership. And then once he was finished, he came to the island to claim his territory, completely unaware that there was still one survivor while leaving the mark. In Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, we learn that Skar King is enslaving the Kong species, so there's a pretty good chance that Kong's tribe ran to avoid the imprisonment, and were severely punished for doing so. But without realizing Kong was still left alive on the island, he was left to take care of the remaining skull crawlers that now inhabit the island. At this time, Skar King would have returned to his home in the Hollow Earth, continuing to grow his army of enslaved Kongs, who, with means of torture, are being conditioned to doing his bidding. This would have continued through to Godzilla King of the Monsters. When Ghidorah attacked the surface world, Skar more than likely had spies on the outside, observing and reporting back with details. News of Ghidorah's attack would give Skar the perfect opportunity to strengthen his army and plan a surface invasion, with a recently weakened world unprepared for another kaiju attack. But until he was ready, Skar would continue to grow his empire in the Hollow Earth, capturing colonies of Kongs and mining for resources alongside his pet Shimo, the very first Titan. While the film goes through the Hollow Earth, you see an abundance of massive crystals, which apparently seems to be some sort of power source, since Godzilla appears to utilize this to evolve into his more powerful form. So there's a big chance that Skar King is using the Kongs to mine for this resource, which he will use in his attack to take over the surface world. This would have come to a screeching stop in Godzilla vs. Kong when one of Skar King's claimed temples was destroyed, after Godzilla blasted a hole through to the Hollow Earth. And Kong jumped through the tunnel to fight Godzilla in Hong Kong. And unfortunately, the Skar King noticed this. A powerful Kong survivor with weaponry? Fighting the Alpha Titan? Who is this? Up to this point, Kong was protected by the storm surrounding Skull Island. But now the secret is out. There's a Kong that survived the Skullcrawler onslaught. After this discovery, when Kong returned to the Hollow Earth at the end of Godzilla vs. Kong, Skar would have sent out patrols to watch Kong, to learn more about him. Either wait for the perfect time to add him to his growing army, and/or kill him for refusing. Now Skar will prepare his army for an inevitable invasion of the surface world to grow his ever-expanding empire, with the assistance of Shimo, who has the ability to freeze entire cities in a cataclysmic freak blizzard. Now, with all this information, it's very clear that Skar King was pulling strings the entire time. From the very beginning, the Titan orchestrated the conflicts we have all witnessed. In Godzilla vs. Kong, he was there on Skull Island during the death and slaughter of Kong's family. He knew about Ghidorah's attacks and used the opportunity to grow his army. And when Godzilla destroyed one of his captured temples, he accelerated his plans to expand his new empire. So let's break down the timeline. Starting at 5000 BC, the Godzilla F Kong Titan War took place, which saw both species in a heated conflict, which would end up with the Kongs being nearly wiped out. With Godzilla and Kong species both nearly defeated, and weakened Skar King with the hopes of conquering the Hollow Earth and executed those who refused to bow to him. But some managed to escape to the surface. 19th century Skar, with his growing empire, catches wind of the tribe of Kongs on Skull Island, and sets loose a horde of skullcrawlers to wipe them out. And when the job was done, he marked the territory as his own. 2019, Skar clearly notices Ghidorah's invasion and accelerates growth on his army to enforce his grip on the Hollow Earth and prepare for invasion. 2024, Godzilla blasts a hole into the Hollow Earth into Skar King's temple, which alerts Skar to the presence of a surviving Kong. 2029, Kong finally finds members of his own species but has to fight Skar King, giving him two options, either to join the army and/or perhaps die for refusing. Then shortly after, launch a full-scale invasion. Now, I'm sure there is more that I'm not exactly completely aware about, and that's where you guys can help assist me in the comments below. But from what I can gather, based on the evidence and hints that we have, Skar King has been behind the scenes from the very beginning, lurking in the shadows, preparing his army for a full invasion of the surface world. I think it now becomes abundantly clear why Adam Wingard would say that Skar King is the most powerful threat that Godzilla and Kong has ever faced to this day. With his intelligence and cunning nature, he is a real evil kaiju. Now, hopefully you enjoyed this lore explanation today, I do say, because there's plenty more of content like this coming your way. So if you just so happen to be new here today, be sure to hit that subscribe button, I say. Smash that like button as hard as a kaiju, comment below what you think of the project, share with your monster-loving friends, and be sure to have your post notifications turned on so you don't miss a short or video update. Because during part 3, that's when things will get interesting. Not only will I be finishing off the Skar King, but I'm really looking forward to making his Bone Whip, which should be, well, a very interesting challenge to say the very least. However, I am quite looking forward to it. Because personally, I think it's one of the coolest melee weapons that the Monsterverse has come up with thus far. But not only will I be making this weapon, I will also be doing a deep dive explaining how it works, and the types of powers that it has, and the effects that it has on Shimo. Not to mention, I think it would be a very cool weapon to, well, play around with in stop-motion animation. It probably won't be necessarily easy to deal with, but I think it would look really cool if pulled off correctly. The biggest struggle will be trying to maintain a lightweight balance while keeping things nice and strong. Now, I do have a couple tricks up my sleeve. However, given my experience with Kong, there is a bit of a problem with that gauntlet being a bit heavy on the one arm, so hopefully there isn't any added arm reinforcements at some point, because During King Kong's restoration, that's going to have to happen at some point. So that could potentially be a bit of a delay in the future, because I might have to just decide to reinforce one of those arms to ensure that he can actually properly wield his weapon. But that's for you and me to discover in part 3. Now, if you enjoyed part 2 of Skar King and perhaps haven't seen part 1, be sure to check out the links in the post description. But now, I'm happy to say it's time for the build rundown, I do say. Where today, one could say, Skar King got all his layers of clay, and I mixed up a custom color for this kaiju, I say, giving him those distinct colorations, you might say. Then once all the mixing was done, we had our first layer of clay sculpting fun. Then once that was out of the way, it was to the gym, you could say, where Skar King got a little jacked up, I say, but still maintaining that lean composure, I do say. Now, one thing I gotta say is those arms are super long, you could say. So I had my concerns about how well this character was going to balance out, you could say. But I'm happy to say, apart from his posture leaning a little to the left right now, I say, he seems to be more capable of standing on his own than King Kong, I do say. Because without the tail, it's not exactly easy to make these characters, well, balanced, I must admit. And a couple people have commented on my feet looking a little weird for these characters, but it's basically a premise for design to ensure that these characters will remain upright, so I don't have to do a bunch of time re-sculpting when they inevitably fall over. It's going to be a fine balancing act, you could say. So much so that I stopped rhyming for that portion, I do say. But anyway, I want to thank you today for sticking around to the very end of this video, I say. So take it away, Clay Me, I do say. Hey, that's your cue. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end of the video. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new. And anyway, that's enough from me. Till next time, take it easy.